everybody, welcome to EduMatch. Thank you so much for joining us. So today, if you're catching us live, then it is December 15th. Yes. So welcome. We are super excited because tonight we have a fantastic topic by a fantastic moderator and a fantastic panel. So without any further ado, we're going to kick things off with some panel introductions. Going first to Kristen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Coppers. I'm author of Differentiated Instruction in the Teaching Profession. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher from Illinois, and I teach secondary education English.
Awesome, Kristen. Super excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us. All right, next up we have Mandy.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mandy Freilich. I am a consultant and author of The Fire Within and Divergent EDU and the upcoming Reignite the Flames. I also do a podcast called Teacher's Aid with on the BAM Radio Network with John Harper. And I work for EduMatch. Woo, the most fun position ever. So yeah, that's me. On to Rochelle.
All right, awesomeness. Thank you, Mandy. Yes, and it's truly an honor to have you working with EduMatch. Whoop, whoop, whoop. All right, up next we have Rochelle.
Hey, Rochelle Dene-Pose. I am proud to say I'm author of the books In Other Words and most recently Unconventional. I am a Spanish and STEAM teacher from Pittsburgh, grades 8 through 12. I've been teaching for a long time, so that pretty much catches you up to where I am right now.
Oh, and she forgot to say that she does like all of the things. So yes, Rochelle is a bomb. So congrats to you on your launch for Unconventional, which just dropped this Friday the 13th, and it's still launching. So you still have some contests going. So if y'all are some lucky folks, then definitely check out Twitter. All right. And last and certainly not least, we have our amazing moderator, Dave. So if you could please introduce yourself and then take it away.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. This is Dave Schmitto joining you from Michigan. Who am I? Well, tonight I feel like I'm kind of like Hank Williams with all my rowdy friends over here tonight. So I'm so glad to just be hanging out with all of you. I am up here freezing my butt off in Michigan. My day job, I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. In other words, I get to hang out with teachers and principals all day, just trying to help kids learn a little bit more. Written a couple books, and I am super pumped to have one in queue right now with EduMatch and joining this wonderful family. So couldn't be happier. So are we ready to get rolling?
Oh, we are ready. Yes. All right. So excited to have you on board and excited for the first question.
All right. So we're going to start off getting a little personal. So be ready. All right. But it's going to be multiple choice. You have to go back in your memory banks a little bit. I want you to think about either the moment you learned to read, the moment you learned how to swim, or the moment you fell in love. So you get to choose one of those three. Yeah, roll your eyes, Mandy. I saw that. You get to choose one of those three. And I'm going to give you some time just to tell the story. Learning to read, learning to swim, or falling in love. Who's going first?
All right,
Rochelle, it's all you. Oh, Kristen, okay. You got saved.
Sorry. So I wasn't actually really good at English or grammar. I actually failed grammar in 7th grade. And I didn't really like reading any books until my sophomore year of college at the junior college, where we read Catcher in the Rye. And it was because of the way the teacher did it, and it was also the book itself. The fact that it was a book of no holds bar, the wording, the phrasing, the content, there was no censorship. So I think I really enjoyed reading something that was real, that someone would actually think of, versus censoring words that, we weren't supposed to hear or know. And the fact of the way she did is that we read on our own and we would talk about it. And she didn't go over like chapter by chapter of what the book was about, which is what I do now, or what I have been doing, because as a college student, she wanted us to own the book, and the fact of that to be responsible. So I like that, where it wasn't like a worksheet and questions for every chapter. We read it and then we just had a large group discussion. So that's kind of where I fell in love with English, and then that's where I went to get my teaching certificate.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Who's next?
I can't remember like any of those things too much. But I do remember that whenever I started reading, oh gosh, that was a really long time ago, but there were a couple different books that I would read. And I remember that when I was a kid, a lot of times that my parents would give me some books to read, and I never wanted to like keep reading the book. Like I just wanted to get really good at like one page and just keep practicing that one page. And I, of course, thought it was hysterical, but my parents didn't really think it was hysterical that I was doing that. So obviously I had to keep building my skills. And so they did find certain books that I really enjoyed reading, which I think I still have today in the house. They were the Paddington Bear books. And for some reason, and I had a stuffed animal that went with it. So I think that just kind of brought it to life for me. And it was kind of like the perfect combination that got me to keep turning the page and, you know, see where it took me as a reader. But it took some time to actually really decide that I enjoyed reading. Even now when I read, I find like that sometimes, like, I don't know if everybody does this, like I struggle over some words. Sometimes I'm like, wait, am I making words up? Like the pronunciation, like it's just so interesting how our brains work, that we can put all of that together. But yeah, I mean, when I think back to reading way back then, that's what my start was.
So good. So good. All right, Mandy, you're up.
So I think I'll go with not the first time that I fell in love, because that's weird and probably not a good story, but I will go with the first thing I ever loved. So how about that? Is that okay? So the first thing I ever remember loving was my blanket as a kid. So I had a security blanket, and I took it with me everywhere. And when I got to middle school, I still slept with it. And I remember having like a reoccurring dream that I was going to go to school and find it in my backpack one day when I would go in my locker. But the worst part about the whole blanket thing was, as an adult, I still slept with it in my pillow. And one time when we were going out to Virginia Beach, we were driving out there and I had my pillow, and I left my pillow in a hotel. And so I called the hotel and they said, we will hold on to the pillow until you're driving back through. And I'm like, awesome. It's super important to me that you hold on to this pillow, right? And they probably thought, okay, crazy lady, we'll hold on to your old pillow, you know? And so when I drove back through, I found out that they had actually thrown it into the big, like, they burn everything that they find. That is, yeah. So it was absolutely traumatizing for me. Luckily that I had the blanket for so long, it was actually two pieces. And so I still have one half of the blanket, but the other half was actually thrown in the incinerator. So that is, I learned to not leave my pillows places and not put things that are worthy of keeping in pillowcases anymore.
That's like a horrific story. That's like Toy Story. It's insane.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I cried picturing him like burning in the incinerator.
Him.
Yeah,
So it's him. Okay, good to know.
It was a blanket, of course it was.
The good news is I'm not going to take your answers and psychoanalyze you all. And however, I do want to go back and review the question again, because the question said, describe the moment. And yet you guys all told these long stories. And I think that's interesting. I'll be honest with you. This is something I've done with people all over the place. And every single time it's the same kind of thing that happens. I say, describe the moment. And no matter which one of those they choose, we always get these long stories from people that are tied to these emotional moments throughout the course of their lives. If it's reading, it might be like being introduced to Catcher in the Rye in high school when they finally feel like they're a reader. Or if it's love, I've never heard a blanket love story before. I've had some people that are all cheesy and say, well, I'm still falling in love today, because they know that's the right answer. But they always go somewhere by telling this whole story. And I use that because I think it's important for us to remember that that's really what all learning is about. All learning is tied to emotion, and all learning is always part of a process. It's very hard to say the single moment you learn to do anything, whether it was math or reading or learn to swim or whatever the case is. So that kind of takes us to question 2. And question 2, I'll read it, and then I want you to kind of process it a little bit. Question 2 says, cartoons show learning as a light bulb moment. You know, we've all seen those cartoons from like the 1950s and 60s where the character has this light bulb that just goes off above their head when they automatically got it. And I think that at times misleads us to think that learning is this poof, it's this moment in time where it just happens, as opposed to this process. So the question for you guys is, what's a better illustration that we could use other than a light bulb going off above somebody's head to describe learning?
Well, I would say that probably, the thing that I like about the light bulb is actually because those moments where you get it are very specific, kind of like you were just saying. Like they're very specific. You can see it on kids' faces when they get a concept, especially after they've been working for it, for so long. And I think those light bulb moments that's actually why I got into teaching, is for those particular moments. But for learning itself, it's obviously more of a journey. So some kind of road or, timeline or something like that. Because, when I was in college and they said the words lifelong learner over and over and over again, and I was so tired of hearing it. But truly it is about where you start learning from the beginning to the end, and how it just never really stops. And within that time, you have 100 light bulb moments, well, thousands, hopefully. So I guess that would be what I would think it would be.
I like that. I picture like Chevy Chase's house in Christmas Vacation, all those light bulbs all over the place. It's not a single light bulb, it's thousands of light bulbs all lighting up to shine the way. That was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think she summed it up for all of us. I think, for me, I'm always drawn to a tree for some reason. I just think that you start with like a foundation and you just continue to grow. Or if we're going with the light bulb thing, I'm thinking of like a shooting star and just, a firework or anything else like that to add on. Whatever. I think maybe for some people it might even be different too, just what you kind of associate it with. For me, knowledge really in the past 3-4 years, I've just seen it represented in a tree for some reason, just growing and even just connecting as an educator for some reason. That's just been symbolic to me, that you have to start with some point and then see what it grows and continues to form and the strength that comes within.
A tree, that would make an amazing book cover. Just saying. Okay.
It would be perfect. It would be perfect.
It would. Okay. I'll see what we can do about that. It's good.
It's the same thing that Mandy said. It's like a path. You always don't take the right path. And when students, they keep getting discouraged, taking the wrong path or getting the wrong answer. And I told my students, I'd rather have you have the wrong answer so we can find the right answer together. And this way, they'll be able to learn. Because if they always had the right answers, they'll never be able to learn. So it's the same thing. It's the path you take. It's the way you take it. It's the obstacles you go over. Those are the learning moments. It's not just having the right answer all the time.
No, I think that's good. And, one of I'm hearing from you all as well is that there are these little moments, these stepping stones that lead us down that journey or that process of learning. One of the things that tends to frustrate me quite a bit is that I think oftentimes in my own world, when I was a classroom teacher and even as an administrator, sometimes I put a capstone on where learning can end, whether it's the chase for proficiency or effectiveness or whatever the case may be. And with the light bulbs can, in this metaphor, can always get brighter. We can always learn more. We can always do more. We can always be more, as opposed to just chasing that first level. So the next question 3 is, what are some things that get impacted by viewing learning as a got it, don't got it mentality, whether it's good or bad? In schools, oftentimes like I said, we chase whether or not a kid has got it or whether or not they don't got it. What are some of the things that are affected by that mindset? And I'll go first if that helps lead the way, because I see you guys all like deep in thought. I don't see those light bulbs popping up above your heads just yet. So one of the things that kind of frustrates me in schools is oftentimes I think we start to label people very early on by when they got it or when they don't got it, whether we call a kid at risk or we throw some sort of special education label on them, or we call a teacher ineffective or minimally effective, or whatever the case may be, because of where they are in a moment in time. And we use that label and they hold on to those labels regardless of when or if they ever eventually get it. So it's the got it, don't got it, and the time constraints that are associated with it sometimes cause a disconnect in my head.
Well, I can give kind of an example of what I think that you mean. And I almost gave this as my first example. So this is going to be like the webinar of traumatic Mandy events. This thing, but so when I was in third grade, I had a teacher who, she was like the teacher for me, you know, like how usually everybody has one, like she was one. Her name was Mrs. Gabershek, and she told me all the time how smart I was. And she was the first one, like in third grade, to tell me how smart I was all the time. And so I loved, in third grade, I absolutely loved school. I was always in the highest reading group, like always excelling in math, like no matter what it was, I was there. And so I went into fourth grade, and I just felt like that teacher did not like me. Like there was no real kindness or anything towards me. Now I could be wrong, but when it came to reading, he took me from the highest reading group and put me in the lowest reading group. And I was struggling in the lowest reading group because I was trying all the time to prove myself on how I could read, because like, look at how fast I am. I'm such a fast reader. What do you mean I need to be in the low reading group? And I would ask him to retest me. And he wouldn't. He just put me in that low reading group. He told me that I just didn't get it. Like it just didn't get reading. And I still to this day remember that. And I got into fifth grade, and again, I was bumped up to the highest reading group. And for years, I believed that he just didn't like me, and that's why I was in the lowest reading group. But looking back, what I actually think it was is I think he might have been someone who recognized I had terrible comprehension. I was super fast at reading. I wasn't like, but even to this day, my comprehension is awful. And, but at a time in education when we were so focused on getting kids to read quickly, I was a superstar. I think I felt like in that case, like my third grade teacher would have said, I didn't get it. My fourth grade teacher would have said that I didn't get it. And my fifth grade teacher would have said that I did get it. So I think that's kind of what you meant.
Yeah, that was good. And I'll take your story and kind of spin it the other way, because again, third grade seems like it was this pivotal year for all these people with reading. So when I was in third grade, I got the label of gifted, and my teachers in third grade thought that Dave's got it. And I then took in my own head and thought, okay, I've got everything, because I got this label now that says I'm gifted. Everything's just supposed to come so easy to me because I've got it. And I went all the way through K-12 school thinking I just got it. And then went out into the real world, college and beyond, and realized, holy crap, there's a whole lot of stuff in this world that I don't got. And I didn't realize that there was this process, and things are always going to get harder and deeper. And I had no idea how to process my way through that. And I hit some huge, huge walls in my life where I started to just feel like I was a failure because I didn't realize that it was always going to get harder. And if you're doing it right, it was always going to get harder. And I fell for the trap of thinking, got it can come as early as third grade. As an 8-year-old, I thought I got it because of the label that was given to me.
You know, and I know stuff, but when I took the test, I completely lost everything. So when they graded just on tests, or when they looked at the test, they would say, I don't got it. But I could get it in discussions. I could do my assignments. I could do the comprehension, but it was a test that I struggled with. And so that kind of put me behind, even though I knew the items. So when I grade my own students, I focus on the standard-based grading, but I also make sure that they got it through the formative assignments, because I don't want them to get lost like I got lost. And at that time, you were just kind of passed over. So any major test, SAT, exams, I knew it, and going into it, I was good. And then started taking it, I just lost everything. Like my mind went blank. So it's always good to reinforce the got it or the not got it during the learning process, and not at the exam time.
Yeah, that's good. The idea of constant assessment, not just having these big moments, but constantly along the way. Rochelle, I want to ask you something similar to this, if that's okay. I was actually just talking about you this morning with my 14-year-old, so I hope your ears weren't burning. But we were talking about you based off of your new book that just came out, and he was asking, what is your specialty? Like, what is your gift? Why do you write so many books? And I talked about how you as Sarah said, are just know all the things. You do all the things. But I talked specifically about AI and VR and how you are like the queen of these things.
Mhm.
And I said, it's amazing to me because these are the things that I don't know anything about. And back when I was in the classroom, if somebody would have come to me and tried to present some of those things to me, I would have kind of pushed back on it and said, I don't need that stuff because school is fine how it is. Do you ever experience that where teachers or school systems, I know we got it, we're fine how we are, and then you have to try to scaffold even school systems to take it to the next level?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I find that that is what we've been up against kind of, I mean, just for years with everything, with anything that's new, any new tech tool, strategies, you know, things we should or shouldn't do in the classroom, there's always going to be pushback. And when it comes to those topics, number one, I am not an expert in them. I spend a lot of time learning, and mostly because one of the courses I teach with 8th graders is focused on STEAM and on emerging technology and looking at the way that the world is now and making predictions about 5, 10, 15 years in the future. I mean, we know the technology is increasing, the AI is increasing, and we all have a responsibility to help our students build those skills. And I think part of it is that, like, depending on how long you've been in education, you may not have ever had to do that, or you might not see how it directly ties into your content area, your grade level, your role, whatever. But there is something that we can all do for that. And I mean, the conversations that I've had, one thing, it's scary. Like, maybe you have had an experience in the past, like let's say coding. And like for me, I'm like, oh, I can't do numbers. Coding is difficult. Doesn't apply to me. I'm a Spanish teacher. But you know, we have to take those risks too, because we want our students to take risks. And if we're only limiting what we're teaching them to the content or what's in the book or whatever the curriculum says, and not taking the opportunity to tie in some of these emerging technologies, like you mentioned, then part of that learning process kind of like it stops, and it doesn't have the potential to push students beyond their comfort zone, our comfort zone, into something that might just be like the greatest thing they've ever experienced and lead them down a path where they're going to discover something or create some new, who knows, digital tool, some new technology to use that's going to benefit everybody. But I think the biggest part of it is like having the conversations and knowing, or at least having a connection of somebody that you know or a resource that you can point to get people started, because it is a challenge when none of us have enough time to do things and to learn all these new things. But we just have to start somewhere and then rely on other people. So when you say like AR, VR, I got Jamie Donnelly for that. I mean, had it not been for her, my comfort zone with that who knows what I would be doing with that area right now. So it's finding somebody to kind of just lead you enough until you're ready to go on your own.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's a great segue to this next and last question is, what are some of the things that we can do to help embrace the process of learning, whether it's individually? I know the term lifelong learner, as I think it was Mandy that said early on, you know, that was in vogue for so many years, that we all need to be these lifelong learners, or Carol Dweck talking about mindset and we need to have a growth mindset. I think those are all in vogue things to say for a time. But the reality is we're all constantly learning, whether it's learning new concepts and new skills, or just continuing to develop deeper understandings of things. What are some things that we can do in school systems, K-12 or in individual classrooms, to help embrace that, so we're not just stopping learning when we get to some designated point?
I think that focusing on that's like, I tell the students all the time, when they do their research papers, I learn from them. So a lot of the stuff that I've learned and we've talked about and discussed, I've learned from their research papers. So they're teaching me. And the students were like, that light bulb moment went on, because the fact of that I don't know everything. And even though I'm the teacher, and even though I have all this education behind me, they're still teaching me something I didn't know. And so they try to find topics I don't know so they can research. And it's just not the top level. It's literally what I tell them, it's the bottom level of the ocean. I want all the stuff on the ocean that nobody sees. You know, you're not going to give me the first page of Google. You know, you're going to go through documents and databases and all this other stuff. We spent 2 months on it. So the fact of that they're teaching me learning, I think helps the process to embrace it, because if they don't realize the authentic work that they're doing, they're not going to do it well. But if they know that it's going to more than one person, or if it's authentic and someone learns from it, I think they're going to do more, and they're going to understand their learning process and actually accept it. The idea of accepting their education is one thing, but wanting to accept it is another.
That's good. Moving beyond just a checklist of just meet these minimum requirements, making it authentic and real so that they can push it even farther. That's good. That's good.
I think that one of the things that I did my last couple of years of teaching that it wasn't even because it was cool at the time. It was just because it was kind of a transformation I was going through myself, and I wanted my students to be a part of that, but was really helping students understand how they learn. And I don't just mean in the sense of, oh, I need to listen to something, but how they learn in the sense of like how their brain functions, like how like for kind of going back to what Rochelle said a little bit, like I understand what my strengths are, and I understand that I don't need to be the master of everything. Like I am only as good as the people I surround myself with. So that means trying to figure out like how I fit into groups, how my personality works with other people, all of those kinds of things. And so, you know, knowing that the people that I keep close to me can be the masters of their craft. And I don't necessarily need to know everything that they do because they know it and they can teach me. And so helping my students to understand that as well, like basically where they fit in the world and how they can embrace learning as being part of them because they're doing it in their way, was super important to me those last couple of years that I was in the classroom.
Oh, Dave, I thought you were gonna say something. So one thing I'll say is like, there's so many possibilities out there for different learning experiences we can bring in with technology. I mean, that's another thing is, you know, some people just don't want to use technology, students and teachers. Like there's this whole thing about like, do you have to be like, how tech literate do you have to be? Do I have to know all of the different skills and all the different tools? But I think perhaps the best way is to really just think about, like in my classroom, I'll try and think about you know, the skills that I notice that my students have in areas where I think that I can help them to build their skills. I definitely want them to learn the Spanish language, but realistically, whenever I've had conferences or things and I've spoken to people who've taken languages in high school and I say, how many of you remember it or use it? There's not nearly as many. And that was something that kind of gave me pause a couple of years ago where I thought, you know, I really need to do something beyond just the content that I'm teaching. Because for years, that's what I was all about. The curriculum, the content, the book, you know, repeat the next day. And now knowing what I know now, and I wish I could go back and change, just being able to find opportunities for students and connecting with other educators to find out like, what are the best ways to bring students into contact with other classrooms, look in the community to find other opportunities, and definitely by modeling for students, like getting involved with them. You know, for example, a couple of years ago, we started project-based learning, which I didn't know a ton about. I actually thought I'd been doing it for years and I was doing learning based on projects, and being open with students and saying, hey, you know what, I'm not the expert. I'm new to this. This is a little bit of a risk, but can we work on this together? And then just embracing that whole process and having that time again to pause and say like, all right, how is this going? What are our next steps? How can we build on that? And getting them to see like it's not an over and done product that you're doing. It's like that ongoing growth process that you're focused on.
Yeah, and I'd actually just like to add on to that too. I think, and Dave, you kind of referred to this in your story of being told you were gifted, and so thinking more or less that you were perfect. I think like Rochelle just said, admitting, hey,
hold on. Are you saying I'm not? Let's just clarify real quick. All right, you're not gonna say that.
I mean, nobody's perfect, Dave. So, but you know, Rochelle said admitting that I'm not the expert and I don't know everything, I think is so important to show students that nobody's perfect. And you know, you're going to screw up, and because we screw up all the time, and we still go on the next day and we still pick ourselves up and we still figure it out. And when, you know, we can talk about content all day long and teaching kids content, but when it really comes down to it, they don't remember half of what I think the studies say something to the effect of that in the average day of learning, you maintain 17% in your brain of what you've actually learned. So if that's true, then the stuff that matters is the stuff where we're modeling risk-taking and we're showing kids how to move forward after they fail, and we're supporting them in that, and we're helping them figure out how it is that they move forward and they learn. So just want to kind of bounce off from what Rochelle said.
No, that's so good. And I think, you know, we could have another huge conversation about skills versus content, or how the two are supported, because I love that conversation. I think it's important for us when we're thinking about our own classrooms, our own schools, to think about pushing kids forward. We can do it in a lot of different ways. We can do it by expanding programming and giving kids more options and opportunities to learn 1,000 different things, or we can give them the opportunity to learn very specific things that are of interest to their passions that they can just go deeper on. And both embrace the process of learning. So, like, for example, I'm a dog guy. I don't know anything about cats, Rochelle. So if I want to know something about cats, I'll reach out to you and say, teach me, because I don't know anything about it. But I could go on and on and on about dogs, because it's where I've lived my life. So you can go deeper with your understanding, or you can just learn more stuff. Yeah, see, there's a dog person right there. Well done, Kristen. Anybody have anything else they want to add to this? Because this has been absolutely amazing. You guys actually held it together pretty good. When I saw this crowd, I was like, uh-oh, where are we going tonight? Because you guys are rowdy. But you guys were spot on. I'm impressed.
We're smart, rowdy people. We know when to turn it on and when to turn it off.
All right. So, Sarah, I think we're turning it back to you now.
All right, cool beans. Well, thank you so much to everybody for this great conversation. So thank you so much, Dave, for moderating it. And thank you to all of our fantastic panelists. So before we go, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Rochelle. If you're following along on Twitter, then you probably saw a contest just dropped for her latest release, Unconventional. So that dropped Friday the 13th. She's holding it up right now. Whoop, whoop. So that's what's up. So Rochelle, do you want to say a couple words about your book?
Sure. I didn't see that one coming. No, it's Unconventional Ways to Thrive in EDU, and it has a lot of different ideas for teachers to get started with anything from project-based learning, let's say choice boards, Genius Hour, ed camps, building PLN, lots of ideas in there. Hopefully that people can just get started with really quickly with lots of resources. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Definitely. And we're excited to have it out there with the world. So definitely, if you're catching this live, then check on Twitter. Check Rochelle at RDENE915. Also check at EduMatch Books, and you'll see ways to get a copy. So definitely check that out. Speaking of Rochelle, next week, for the next 2 weeks, the next two Tweet and Talks, then we're going to have Rochelle moderating. Next week will be the future of education and work, and I believe we're going to skip a week for the winter break, and then we'll be back on the 5th of January with artificial intelligence part 3. Is that right? And E915. Also check cool awesomeness. And yeah, so great. So thank you all so much for being part of this. And thank you to all of you again who are watching, tuning in, participating, to the panelists, to the moderator. Just thank you to the whole familia. So everybody have a wonderful rest of your week.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.